Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, depending where you're joining us from. Boa noite, boa tarde, or bom dia. Welcome and thank you so much for joining the second of a series of webinars hosted by Maliasili on expanding community conservation across Africa. My name is Joanna. I am part of the Maliasili team, and I am joining you today from my hometown of Maputo. So please introduce yourselves. As Jesse mentioned in the chat, we'd love to know who's joining us today. So please share your name, your organization, and where you're joining us from today. Now, just a couple of logistics. As Maliasili expands and we start to work in new geographies, we are adding new languages to our portfolio, which is quite exciting. And today's webinar is going to be presented both in Portuguese and in English. We will have an interpreter who is going to help us make sure that everyone can make the most out of the webinar. You will see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a button that says interpretation. And what I'm going to ask you to do is when someone is presenting in Portuguese, you are going to select Portuguese if you want it to be translated to Portuguese and vice versa. I will let you know in advance before a presenter starts, so you know how to select the language accordingly. Finally, throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please share them with us in the chat. We will have a Q&A session after the presentations, and we will try to address your questions. But we will also have someone on the chat trying to answer some of them. So please share freely as we go along. Now, if you joined our first webinar in April, we were joined by one of our Tanzanian partners, Honey Guide, who shared with us their story of how and why community conservation can work across Tanzania. Today, we are traveling south and across the border to Mozambique, and we are joined by our first Mozambican partner, ReGeCom. Now, ReGeCom in Portuguese is short for Community Management Network. And as the name suggests, it is a network of NGO, academic, and government institutions that are working to promote and coordinate the development of tools and approaches to improve community governance of natural resources and land in Mozambique. Now, a lot of you may be familiar with the early days of community natural resource management from the Campfire program in Zimbabwe, for example, the Conservancy movement in Namibia, and others. Mozambique's community natural resource management history, however, is less known. The evolution of the community natural resource management history in Mozambique followed a lot of implementation and starting of new laws, a lot of meetings that brought a number of stakeholders together. Some of the first approaches were very much inspired by the Campfire program in Zambia, Chumachatu, starting in the early 90s. And there's been a number of conferences bringing people together to discuss what community means in Mozambique, to talk about giving ownership to communities to manage and benefit from their own resources. But there's growing challenges. Population growth is definitely a big challenge, movement of people across the country. And so a lot has been done on paper, but in practice, there's a lot more that is needed. Community management of natural resources is still at a very nascent stage in Mozambique, and so it's going to be interesting to hear from ReGeCom how they are paving the way for a new approach. Now, just before we start, before I hand over to ReGeCom, I would just like to tell you a little bit about them. For example, 2 of the founding members of ReGeCom were part of the 3rd cohort of the African Conservation Leadership Network program. And since then, we've developed a very close working relationship, which culminated this year with us officializing our partnership. Now, since I've started working with ReGeCom, I can really see how building and strengthening networks is core to the work that they do. Recently, while facilitating their strategic planning workshop, Their team was very kind to gift the women in the group Capulanas or Kitenges in celebration of Mozambican Women's Day, which happened to be during that week. And this small gesture really helped to create a sense of connection, of unity, and made us all, facilitators included, feel part of this network, which we very much feel a part of. Lastly, something very noteworthy about ReGeCom, which they may not promote themselves, so I'm going to do that for them, is that they have been invited by the Mozambican government to help develop the national community-based natural resource management program, which we are hoping will be kicked off soon. The list could go on and on, but I'm sure you'd rather hear from ReGeCom directly. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to ReGeCom's Executive Director, José Monteiro, who is going to be speaking to us in English. So please remember to select the English option if you would like a Portuguese translation. Welcome, José.
Hello, good afternoon or good morning. I don't know where everybody's coming or is going to be participating in from. Thank you very much, Joanna, and thank you, Maliasili, for this opportunity for ReGeCom to, share a little bit what we're doing and our vision on how do we can reframe or restrengthen CBNRM network approach in Mozambique. I think I'm just going to quickly share a small presentation that will help me guide through, and I hope it's visible. Can everybody see that? Is it visible?
Yes, we can see it, José.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. So, we are considering what I'm going to present here is exactly picking from what Katerina is saying, the history of CBNRM, where we are going forward, and how we are paving the new approach of community-based natural resource management in Mozambique. But I want to start by, telling a story. When we were building ReGeCom, we used to visit communities to understand what was going on, what was the institution, if the institutions, a community institution that was established in the past were working or not. And I remember me and my colleagues working in these communities in the southern part of Chimanimani National Park. And after we discussing about the importance of CBNRM, the importance of having community leading the process of managing land and natural resource management, and then the community leader just stood up and said, look, all these things that you're doing, are saying is beautiful, but you came too late here to our community. We don't have any more trees. The forest concession that was there chopped down all the trees. We don't have no more trees, and we don't even have resources, or we didn't gain anything from there. It's a sad story at that moment, but it also raised us as the concern that it's more urgent to work and to make communities part of this process and conservation, and making sure that communities can be part on ensuring that land and natural resource management are part of the critical process of planning at the local level, but also at the national level. Based on this urgency, we are coming from story that whatever happened in the past in terms of paving CBNRM, we need to understand that the country is huge. The effort that have been done in the past in ensuring that we establish community-based institution at the community have been done in a way that through a process of community land delimitation, ensuring that you could register the community land, also establishing the community natural resource management committees. But the country is huge, the process have been done, and what we have seen is scattered effort with limited capacity to ensure that all the approach was delivered in the same standardized way for the whole country. So if you look closely at this map, you can see that this is Mozambique with the green parts where the community, the protected areas in Mozambique, and the brown areas at the community that we have secured community land rights in the country to process from the government and support from the other donors. But the effort of making sure that we have these community land rights secured and having the National Resource Management Committees, what we realized that is these institutions, which were established 800 plus community institutions that they want, none of them particularly are really working in a really sense of representing community, making decisions for all the people. What we've seen in this institution, there was a lot of elite capture. Decisions were made by 2 or 3 people. The process of benefit sharing were not really working. And what we can see even today, despite all the effort in the past, you can see that there's a lot of habitat loss. There's a lot of deforestation going on. So we've been discussing as a team, as a group, that the solution is still the same. We want communities to be at the center of land use planning, at the center of natural resource management. We want communities to make decisions based on what are their aspiration of development. To do that, we needed to understand what was the best approach to ensure that the governance system at the community level could really work for the people and then for the nature. So the solution was based first on considering what could be the role of the ReGeCom here. One is we established ReGeCom because we understand that despite the effort of all the institutions that they've been working with communities, I want to repeat this part, with communities in the past, they had the very good intention, but in the country, we didn't even have a national standards on how we do the engagement of communities to this natural resource management process. You can find an entity working in Niassa, an entity working in Pemba, an entity working all with a different approach with their own guidelines, but not a guideline that could say, this is a national guideline and we would like to pursue and follow as a national, as a country. The additional part why we build ReGeCom is, despite having natural resource management committees as entities at that point, what we didn't see is a national platform where this community could come and discuss their problems, present their opinions on how they want to see their involvement in management, land, and natural resource in Mozambique. So what we've seen is, yes, is a lot of institutions we're working with communities, but we want, the reason for ReGeCom is we want this to be a platform for communities where we communities discuss their own problems and discuss their own challenge when it comes to land and natural resource management. Additionally, ReGeCom comes because we understand that there was a lot of problems and information to make right decisions, either to local community, either for the government or the private sector, or even donors. So ReGeCom was established to be that platform where you can find information about land, information about community, what is going on in the community, so that communities themselves can make a better decisions. Communities themselves can make a better interaction with third parties, but also government can make a better decisions, and even donors can make a better decision on where to allocate these resources. So we needed to take advantage of the diversity of institutions that we had already working with communities. So what we created is to make sure to reframe CBNRM in Mozambique, we needed to work together. The important part of ReGeCom in Mozambique at this time was making sure that we have civil society organization, academia, national non-NGOs, non-governmental NGOs, and most importantly, since day zero, we had a very good support for the government. For me, I think this is the first time I see in Mozambique institutions from civil society organization, academia, NGOs, and government sitting together and discussing what could be the role of communities in securing their land and communities in managing their land and natural resource management. Another advantage of having this diversity of institutions, beside their own capacity, is also scalability. As I showed you that map, the challenge of the country is huge. We have members scattered all over the country that make sure that we implement this standardized approach everywhere we can work with the communities in the country. So when we're talking about having members discussing and working together to deliver this approach in everywhere, we need to still go back and focus that we identified community governance as one of the main bottlenecks for CBNRM in Mozambique. Remember, what we've been told about the story of CBNRM is about, like, we've been teaching communities, we're trying, like, teaching community not to burn, teaching community to manage their own land. But for some reason, the part of how communities would make better decisions of their land and natural resources, these were not properly facilitated. So when we're talking about community governance here, there are two issues I want to bring in perspective. One is that there is the part of organizing people, and then there's a part of organizing land. So management, when you're saying about community-based natural resource management, management is exactly combining these two elements. On the people side, when we're talking about organizing people, is making sure that decisions about that land, that natural resources need to be done by the people itself, not from outside, but the people that are directly living with these resources. So what we've seen in the past is this decision have been done by one person or two person, a very elite people in, at the community level. And that's why it was not working. That's why people were not feeling any benefit from that. So the added value that we brought on establishing ReGeCom is we build the community governance guideline. And, I think it was a very beautiful exercise because all those institutions that we've seen there have come together to work and say, how do we fix it? What is going to be the best approach so that we can use and we have really, really strong institutions on the ground. One added value that we brought is, beside working with community facilitators, remember, working with communities, I don't live in the community. There are a lot of other members that don't, but we need to respect the people that live there. We need to work with them. So the added value is, by training community facilitators, we facilitate the exercise of facilitators going in each of the households in each community to explain that all of the members in that communities, they have the role. They could participate in decision making, they could participate in making, they could decide the life of that community and their land in a general assembly all together. So that was the approach that we're bringing when you're talking about organizing people. The other part is organizing land. So there are three elements on organizing lands I want to bring, and this is part of the approach that we're bringing as a ReGeCom and very detailed in our community governance guideline. First is secure community land rights. So whatever we do, we need to make sure that that community land that we're working on, that we're facilitating CBNRM, it's secure on their right, is registered in the national cadastre. So the process in the past have been very different. So we've been securing community land rights and then trying to identify the institution. As you see the difference here, we start with the institution, organizing people, and then securing community land rights, because you create appropriation from the process. The second tool that we bring when we're organizing land is ensure that the community themselves, they write what are their aspirations for development. What do they want to reach 10 years from now, 20 years from now? This tool, this planning doc, it's important for they to interact with third parties. So this is the second tool that we bring when you're saying organizing land. The third element, which is critical, is the community land use plan. So what we've seen in the country in the last 30 years is all the land use planning have been done in a very high scale, or a national level, provincial level, and district level. It was not matching to what's going on the community side. So we're working with the National Directorate of Land to making sure that we have a standard on how we develop the community land use plan and add it to the process of community governance. So these two elements that I mentioned, it is done throughout of 9 to 12 months. So in the past, consolidating, establishing community institutions, it was often taken for 1 week. It could happen like, you could go to a community and ask the leader, you know, a leader, I want a natural resource management committee. Can you find me 10 people to be part of this committee? So the leader is the ability to choose whoever you want to be part of this process. Today, the approach we're building, the approach you're consolidating in the community you're working right now, and well defined in the community governance guideline, it does not allow that. It means that you need time to establish these community-based institutions, and then you need time to also develop these tools to support decision-making of these institutions. But one thing is establishing the tools. Another thing is, how do I know that there is progress? How do I know if things are working? So beside developing the community guideline, the community governance guideline, ReGeCom, based on the experience of all those members, and particularly the information from the government, we developed the community information system. I think this is going to be one of the art in terms of getting information from what's going on at the community level. So before we designed the community information system, we went in each of the institutions. We went to the National Directorate of Land asking, what would you like to see in the platform so that you can monitor information? We went to ANAC, went to National Directorate of Rural Development. So in different institutions, we collected what they would like to see to monitor what was going on at the community level. So the idea of this community information system is actually to track and to monitor governance, is to track investments at the community level, but also livelihoods and conservation and disaster. So the idea is, even though it's still work in progress, because what we have a database of 2,000 plus communities that have been secured their land, but we're only showing 400 right here, is that we want to go in every communities that we are consolidating governance system, we want to use that platform, this platform, to monitor what's going on. This platform is accessible to everybody. Everybody can go to the ReGeCom website and go to MozSeek, and they'll have access to that. You will see a lot of improvements in the next time on this specific platform, because we have already consolidated governance system in many communities that we are really eager to see them displayed in the platform. In terms of results, I mean, we're coming to a situation where we didn't have this governance system established in the way we've designed in a common as a standardized place. So with support from Rainforest Trust, with support from FNDS, Mosbio Project, World Bank, and with support from Biofund and European Union, we are working in 4 landscapes in Mozambique. And what we're doing in this landscape, we're really consolidating governance system based on the approach that we have been building in these 2 years as ReGeCom. So we have been, 47 community committees have been established, and all these have been established, I mean, following the legislation and following the approach that we've set up in place. And we have reached out to almost 5,800 households that were socialized so that they can understand what does it mean to be part of governance system at the community level. I want to bring 2 examples here on what exactly we've been doing. One is in Mont Mabo, where we are working to establish a community conservation area. This was critical to see that if you engage with communities, communities can be a very good ally in supporting in terms of mapping their own resources, mapping their own people, and reducing your operational cost. What you can see here on green is what is the Mabo Mountain and the Mabo Forest. But because we want to establish Mabo as a conservation area, the first thing we needed to do is to see how many communities are around Mabo and how are they organized, and if their governance system were really working properly. So we've done the assessment of governance in each of these communities. But then for mapping, because we've trained community facilitators, we give them tablets, and then they mapped all the households that are living in each around the Mont Mabo. This is critical for management. We are still building the management plan for Mabo, and this is critical because the boundaries of Mont Mabo, the boundary of these conservation areas, need to be established by these people, and the land use planning as well. So having community involved in the early stage of planning land and natural resource management is critical when we are bringing CBNRM as a new framework for livelihood and conservation. The another example is in Chimanimani. I think this is what clearly shows the importance of consolidating governance system at the right level if you want to work on CBNRM in Mozambique. You will see by these three pictures that the first one on the left is Chimanimani National Park. And here, right here is one community that is called Maronga community. For a long time, Maronga community was considered as, just one big community. And when we started working there, understanding their governance system, mapping them, we realized that actually what was considered to be Maronga community, it was so huge in terms of people that the voice of one people, that one representative here was not heard anywhere else in that community. So based on what the custom practice on that community, we really identified that Maronga was divided in 7 small communities that we call now 7 community committees. So this is critical different because now instead of having one person representing all these, you have actually 7 committees that can talk about what's going on in their own land, on their own resources, and they can be considered accountable and also be a critical part in terms of land and natural resource management in this community. So now that we are, in the new law, there is this process of establishing the Management Council for National Parks. It's easy now for each of these communities to sit on the table and say what is going on within their land, instead of having somebody here that does not know exactly what is going on in any other part of that land. So this kind of approaches on building up an effective governance system from the bottom level is what we're bringing as a mechanism to improve CBNRM in Mozambique. So what we realized, the improvements, when we are saying improving, repathing, redraw CBNRM in Mozambique, we are thinking about 5 elements. First is, in the past, efforts have been done in very specific issues. You could find financing like, okay, well, I'm just going to support land rights. I'm just going to support building capacity. I'm just going to support economy in this community. What you realized is for an effective CBNRM to work, we need to look all these 5 tools as a package. You need to build community governance system. You need to know if the rights are there. You need to build the capacity, and then you need to give tools such as land use planning, management, and other tools that support decision-making in that community. The economy, which is the critical part of it, it comes all over based on the land use planning and the opportunities and the value chains that is there. What we are going to be doing as ReGeCom is still monitor and looking at the community information system and see how the progress is going when you're talking about CBNRM in Mozambique. So the way forward for CBNRM in Mozambique is ensuring we understand about the limitations, we understand about the challenges, and we understand about the opportunities that we have for CBNRM in Mozambique. When it comes to the risks that, when it comes to the risks of CBNRM in Mozambique, the first risk is we are clear that it might not work in every community. There's disruption in terms of weak governance system, weak effective system is already there. So we are aware that in most parts of the way we're going to work, it might not be fit properly. The challenge though is, as we're presented, the country is huge. We need to have a capacity, we need to have resources to ensure that at least we pursue the CBNRM network, the CBNRM approach in communities that are around conservation areas. At least we know that the resources are there, that it's possible to maintain and to preserve those resources. When it comes to opportunities, I think there are millions of opportunities making sure that this thing works. First, we need to ensure that this model, ensure that we finance this package in it work. We need to ensure that you got members that are already committed, They have standards that are built nationally, the same way we have community governance guidelines. We're building now the land use planning guidelines nationwide. So all these are all tools that can be empowered to ensure that the opportunities on developing carbon business that are related to nature in these communities, they bring community in the table in a very proper way. So I think I'm going to stop here for now and then pass the word to Joanna. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jose. That was incredible and so helpful in really understanding the work that ReGeCom is doing. I found that story that you shared right at the beginning so powerful, and it's a story that could have easily had a set ending, but instead it inspired you to start a movement to bring ownership and benefits from natural resources to communities. So that was quite an incredible way to start hearing about your work. Now we have had a few questions shared in the chat, but I'd like to start with a question of my own. And I would like to ask you, Jose, why a national network organization? Why did you and others choose to start a network?
Well, thank you. I got my colleagues here. They can also answer that. But first is we understand that we couldn't, this is not a work for one institution. I mean, we've seen silos working in the past, and what you can see is what we've been trying to fix now is that people have been working in silos, no effective governance system was established, and still deforestation is going on. So this is not, I remember very clearly in the 5th conference that Katarina mentioned, I remember the vice minister saying, like, you're always bringing problems and the solutions are within all of you institutions that are here. So we needed to be, I think it was just the right time to do it. We couldn't do it just for one institution. So we needed to come together and so that we can bring the solution up.
That's great, and what a way to be handed that responsibility to find the solution together. I think it speaks to what you said in the beginning, how like one thing that has been key to the success of your work is that you have a really good relationship with the government. In fact, you have government institutions as part of your membership, and that's been key to the success of your work. And now, talking about your membership, you have institutions in 8 out of the 10 provinces in Mozambique. And as you mentioned as well, Mozambique is quite a big country. So how are you making collective decisions? How are you structuring your work to make sure that everyone, every of your member institutions is being part of decision-making in your network?
I don't know if my colleagues Dreust and Nelson are here. So I think we need to be the mirror of what governance, an effective governance system should be. So we still have a General Assembly where we make decisions about what we're going to do this year. We present our report. So we are an example of what governance system should be working at the community level. So, but still, we have a management unit. You got an executive management unit where I work. And that's, I do these connections with the government, but I don't make decisions. Decisions are made in a collective way, in a very collective way. So we need to capture the capacity in each of these members that are represented in each country, in each province, because they know exactly what is going on, what is the nuance of that specific province. So the idea, it's still growing. As ReGeCom, we still have, we are covering 8 provinces out of 10, but the capacity of these 8 institutions that are scattered in this province, I think they can deliver the work based on the approach that we all build.
Thank you. So it really sounds to me like you do have this management, this coordinating unit, but it's you can't talk about the ReGeCom without talking about its members. It's really a collective, and everyone is brought to the table in order to think about the strategy, the approaches, and really any decision that is being made. Now we have a question that was asked in the chat. Does law and policy in Mozambique actually give power to communities to be involved and have significant influence over decision-making around natural resources?
Well, I think one of the reasons we really established ReGeCom is we want to take advantage of the law. Mozambique, I think, is one of the countries with really, really beautiful laws when it comes to empowering communities. But if they're effective, that's another question. So there are, in Mozambique, actually, all land-related law or resources-related law requires that you consult communities for anything. You want a piece of land, you need to consult community. You want to make an investment, a concession, you need to consult community. And that's where the question is, and that's why we are really doing this. Who are you consulting? Are you consulting the proper institution? Are you consulting the community, or are you consulting one person in the community or the elite members in the community? And this has been the main problem. That's why we presented in the beginning that if you establish a wrong institution to represent communities, it means your consultation is going wrong, your decision is going to be wrong, your investment is not going to be captured by, the benefit are not being captured by all the community members. So that's why it's important to build this governance system. So when you're consulting, you are sure that you're making a decision and the community have taken a decision based on what the communities have wanted. So the laws are there. What we expect to happen is to see the improvement and implementation of these laws in Mozambique with an effective governance system, at the community level. So the laws are there, but it haven't been implemented in a proper way, but it is there, very clear.
Thank you. And I think so again, is laws are important and it's good to have them. As you said, Mozambique actually has quite good laws when it comes to land, to natural resources conservation, but the systems and the frameworks for those laws to be implemented need to be there. So connected, and a lot of that has to do with the different levels of authority and leadership within, from the community to a central government. And one of the other questions that was asked in the chat is related to this. And based on your community governance experience, has the leadership within the community level been inclusive and participatory? And if so or not, are there any challenges, and how have you approached and hopefully solved some of those problems, some of those challenges?
I would let my colleague from Maputo is working in Maputo National Park, Drost. If that we've consolidated 4 community governance system, meaning that we established 4 community committees. He can explain about the experience on dealing with the leaders and how the leaders accept the approach, so that they feel like, he's not losing his power as a leader. So he's going to explain a little bit on that. But I want to tell that we're already aware, as I say, as part of the risk, we need to be aware that this might not work everywhere. Because exactly, the people that have been doing this for 30 years have been gaining advantage of 30 years. It might be difficult. So we are using facilitation skills that we know. That's why we train community facilitators. This is not a skill, and actually this is the challenge. We would like Mozambique to be really having leadership programs specific for community orientation. People that are trained to facilitate work at the community level. But that's the challenge we have in front. It might not work everywhere, but I think we know the path to do it. So I'll let Drost, maybe you can explain a little bit the experience today, and how did you deal with community leaders, and how did it went in Maputo National Park?
Yes, I'm going to ask you to answer that question in 1 minute, if you can. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dirch. And just to capture some of that, Dirch was telling us a story of a leader who went from making decisions on his own and seeing the committees as a threat to his own benefits to, through this participatory approach where everyone at a community, leaders and community members, committees are brought together and the process is facilitated in a very collective way. Now in this specific community, the situation is that the leader himself is the one taking initiative whenever there's an external investor coming through or any other community development project. He's the one bringing everyone in to make collective decisions. So I think, again, this very participatory approach where the community is engaged from very early on and decisions are made collectively, it's really important. And it's proven to be quite successful. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I wanted to really thank Katarina for providing us with the context and really setting the stage for us to understand why ReGeCom is doing the work that it's doing. And thank you, Jose, Nelson, and Reuch for telling us about the work that you're doing. I think it's starting to help us understand the work that is being done in Mozambique, and it's really encouraging to see this network of organizations coming together collectively looking for solutions. I think you mentioned, Jose, initially that you were given this challenge in one of these conferences. You're here, the solutions are in your hands. So I'm challenging you to go and collectively find those solutions. And so it's really encouraging, and we're very excited to be working with ReGeCom, hoping to finalize your strategy soon. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. In this webinar, we will share more resources. We will share a recording of this session, and we will do our best in that communication to answer some of the other questions that we were not able to answer today. Please join us for our next webinar on the 8th of June, which is going to be about CASA. Otherwise, thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you soon. Thank you so much.